Hey everyone, my name is Tilly. Welcome back to another video. Today I thought we would talk about risk taking because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and Callum and I have been having conversations about it over the last few days, and I kind of wanted to explore it in a little bit more detail with you. I want to talk about the good things, but then also the bad things that can come about from taking risks, because I feel like all we hear is why we need to be risk takers and push ourselves out of our comfort zones, but I do want to acknowledge that that comes with some things that a lot of us would rather avoid. There's a downside. So let's talk about it. Before we get into it, I just want to let you know that I have cracked the code to a perfectly crisp, slicked back bun. And you're not going to believe it. It's not washing your hair for a few days and then letting the oil and the grease bring about the bun of your dreams. As we get into this, I also just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what is a risk. And to me, it is a decision or an action or an activity that brings about a certain level of uncertainty. You're not sure what the end result is going to be. You don't know whether it's going to be positive, and you don't know whether it's going to be negative. But I do think that taking a risk, generally speaking, we hope that it will end positively, right? Otherwise, it's just taking a risk for risk's sake. So it's some activity that brings about uncertainty. Exploring the good and bad side of it, I also wanted to put it into context of some risks that I've been taking recently. The biggest one that I can think of is last year, Callum got a contract to play rugby over here in the UK. Neither Callum or myself have spent any time in the UK, so we really didn't know what it was going to be like. So for us to move here from Hong Kong was a huge risk. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about as we explore all of this today. So I thought we'd talk about the bad things first. Taking a risk brings up a lot of uncomfortable feelings. It brings up things that maybe you've been trying to push down, or maybe you've been able to avoid because you haven't been pushed out of your comfort zone, right? Some of those uncomfortable feelings are things like loneliness. They might be sadness, being frightened or embarrassed. Those feelings are really difficult to sit with. And even though they're just feelings and it's not necessarily good or bad that we have them, I don't know about you guys, but I certainly have a tendency to want to distract myself and move away from those feelings and just go back to being happy. But when you're taking a risk, you're really confronted with all of those emotions, and you don't necessarily have the option to distract yourself or move away from it. In moving to the UK, for example, one of those really big feelings, or the uncomfortable ones, was loneliness. Loneliness because our support system that we had built so rigorously from growing up in Hong Kong, that support system was no longer there. And when you're taking a risk of any kind, it's not necessarily just leaving the country or moving somewhere away from your family and friends. A risk brings about changes in your support systems. Some people might not believe in you. Some people might doubt you in that risk that you're taking. Because in a lot of ways, you being brave enough to take a risk makes other people realize the ways in which they're not being brave. And it makes other people realize ways in which they're holding themselves back and keeping themselves stuck. So there might be changes in the people that you have around you all the time, for better or for worse. And because of those changes, or in the context of our risk, because of us leaving the country where all our family and friends are, you have to root for yourself. And some people might look at that and think that that's a really good thing. And obviously we all want to be rooting for ourselves, but it's also really challenging. If you're the only person that sees the potential in the decision that you're making, that's really isolating. You kind of have to dig deep and find that place within yourself where there is no doubt. Or if there is doubt, you have to find that place in yourself where you're okay if things go badly. And that's really overwhelming. Not being able to lean on people for that support because they might not agree with your risk or because they're not there, that's challenging. In the context of my risk again, so moving here to follow Callum, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job. I had no prospects other than going to be with Callum. And I'm sure a lot of people might have disagreed with that decision, or a lot of people would have felt scared for me. They would have felt anxious for me. I felt anxious for me too, but I had to root for myself. And you kind of have to finally conquer that part in your brain that's like, well, what if something doesn't work out? Well, I had to root for myself and say, it is going to work out. There's not really another option. And I've not needed to put that amount of trust in myself before. So that was a really new experience for me. With any decision you make, generally speaking, everybody's going to have an opinion, right? But particularly when there's a decision you're making that may or may not end positively. If it works out, that's great. And then a lot of the support system that you used to have will probably come back and be like,
oh yeah, we knew you could do it.
But if it doesn't work out, you might have people saying, I told you so. And that's another one of the downsides to risk. If it goes badly, it can make it so that you're less likely to take a risk in the future. You might experience regret. You might beat yourself up because you should have known not to be optimistic, or you should have known that you shouldn't take chances on yourself. And that's a really upsetting way of looking at it, but those are things that come from making decisions when you don't know what the answer is going to be, when you don't know what the outcome is going to look like. Another one of the big feelings that came up for me, so we had loneliness, but it's also kind of embarrassment. I've gotten past this, but I do want to talk to you guys about it and see what you think and see if it resonates with you. When you're the only person who believes that something you're doing is going a certain way, and you're the only person that believes in the potential of it despite what negative things might happen, it can be really embarrassing if you're wrong. And that fear is really difficult to navigate. What if it doesn't work out? That question is always there. And I don't think anybody who takes a risk would say that it's not there. But I think that people who encourage us to take risks should acknowledge that's something you're gonna have to contend with. And I know that there's worse things in the world than feeling embarrassed, but that can be a major limiting factor and a major reason why we don't do so many of the things we want to do. Is because we don't want to be left out. We don't want to seem like we don't fit in with everybody else. We don't want to seem like we thought something that was wrong, but everybody else knew apparently that it was right. Working through all of this, that risk taking is really, really scary. I'm still terrified. Filming this video, I'm terrified. Because I suppose the YouTube channel is a risk as well. I'm doing it because I love it and I want to create community, and I want people to feel like they're less alone, because I think we all go through so many similar things. A lot of people might look at this and be like, why are you still doing this? It's not really financially working for you. It might not ever work for you.
So why?
But you know what? Nobody knows what's gonna happen. And your optimism and your bravery might pay off. And that brings me to the good side of taking risks. The first positive that I can think of, and if you're anything like me, you might resonate with this, but before I do something, I overthink it. I think of all the possible outcomes. I think of everything that could go wrong, but I don't often think about what could go right. And I say that to kind of bring up that I'm very calculated in what I do. And if I think something will go badly, I really honestly don't often do it. If I don't know how something is going to turn out, I sometimes won't even try. So the fact that I've taken a risk, or if you're watching this video, you've taken a risk, you did it. Despite all of the what ifs from everybody else and from yourself, you did it. You're doing it right now. That is incredible. You turned something that was in your head and you're making it into a reality. For better or for worse, you're brave, and that is something to be celebrated. Transitioning from that point of having an idea in your head and then thinking about it and then having all of those doubts and then actually going and doing it despite all of that, you got out of your head. I honestly could just be happy with that point and talk about that point all day. The next side of things is that despite the changes in your support system and despite the changes potentially, like me, in your new environment, you are leaning on yourself. You backed yourself enough to take that risk and to take that leap. You might find through taking that leap that you've actually found a new community or a new group of people who are more aligned with the version of yourself that you see inside and the version of yourself that you want to be. If people didn't support your potential and didn't help get you towards where you want to go and help move you towards taking that risk, then that might be coming from fear for you, but it also could be them projecting their own insecurities about what ifs onto you. So the potential of finding people who are more in your corner, a new community who resonates with you and believes in what you believe in, that's an incredible what if. Yeah, what if things go wrong? But what if you get that? What if you get a new support system? What if you meet new people and experience new things? What if things go well? I know it's so easy to focus on the downsides, and we're very creative thinkers. I'm sure a lot of us are, so we can think of a lot of downsides. But genuinely, what if things go right? And you are the only person who saw it, and you're the only person who believed in it. Embarrassment, that feels pretty good. I also think by doing something that scares you and by doing something that you've been ruminating on or you've been thinking about for a while, you are showing how brave you are. But also your bill for regret at the end of your life is going to be way lower. Who wants to wake up in 50, 60, 70 years time and think, oh my gosh, well, I could have done it if I did it then, or I should have done this, I should have done that. I wish I hadn't cared what people thought about me. I wish I just lived my life for me and I wasn't worried what other people thought. No one wants to think like that. By you taking a risk and betting on yourself, you are showing the world your power, but you're also showing yourself that you're living for you. And I don't know about you, even if something goes wrong, I think I'm gonna be less likely to regret that in the future. I have learned so much about myself in the last year, more so than I ever would have if I had stayed at home with my family. I love you guys, but I was very, very comfortable. I had like routine. I knew what was gonna happen when I woke up every day. I didn't know, but I knew. Putting myself in an environment where, honestly, like your risk doesn't have to be as big as completely moving countries and uprooting your life. I'm not suggesting that you do that. But putting myself in a new environment really made me reflect on things. It made me acutely aware of areas in which I was struggling and I needed help. But it also made me acutely aware of good things about myself too. Like, I did start my YouTube channel. I have made new friends. Those are really positive things. And I wouldn't have done that, honestly. Use the YouTube channel, for example, and dig into that a little bit deeper. I'd been thinking about it for years and I was so scared of what everybody thought of me. But I got here, and I think maybe taking that risk and following Callum to the UK, it kind of highlighted, like, if I don't bet on myself now, when am I going to bet on myself? Nobody else is going to take that risk for me. Like I said, you might have so many people in your corner warning you of all the possible bad outcomes that might happen. So other people aren't going to help me. They're not going to save me, so I had to do it myself. I learned that I can be the person that I think I am in my mind. Those two things can line up. Like, I have this image of myself as somebody who's really brave and tough, but I never really did anything to put myself in a situation to test that. And now I have, and I know that I'm brave and I'm strong, and I can do scary things. I can do challenging things. It's made me trust myself a little bit more. And on a completely different note, it's also made me aware that ADHD is something that I really struggle with. Growing up around family and a really strong support system who would pick up the slack when I forgot things or lost things or didn't remember appointments, that made it so a lot of my symptoms went kind of unnoticed. But then I'm here by myself and I'm acutely aware that there are things that I struggle with. So I wouldn't even know my brain as well as I do now if I didn't take a risk. That's quite heavy. I'm way more capable than I know, and so are you. Like, what happens if you are starting a new business? It might not work, you know? It might not, but it might. What if everything works out? And what if you could have everything you wanted, but it starts by taking a small risk and by betting on yourself? It's so easy to fall into a negative spiral. Trust me, as somebody with anxiety disorder and ADHD, I'm very well equipped to spiral negatively. But it's just so much more fun to think optimistically. Like, that makes me excited. That makes my heart race. It gives me butterflies thinking about what could happen. And so I'm gonna lean into that. That's a better use of my time than sinking down into this pit and doing nothing because I'm so overwhelmed and scared. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, so I do want to kind of balance that out by saying, what happens if things don't work out? Taking a risk and failing or having something not go the way that you wanted it to, that's not a moral failing. You shouldn't feel shame around that. It doesn't make you a bad person because you tried something and it didn't work. Just like it doesn't make you a good person if you tried something and it does work. Who you are as a person, your compassion, your strength, your kindness, your empathy, all of that doesn't change depending on whether you do something and it works or doesn't. It's not a moral failing, doesn't change who you are. If it doesn't work out, I want you to reframe it from, the fact that you tried something new and you believed in yourself and you believed in your capacities and you did it. The fact that you were brave, the fact that you were a dreamer, that is something to be proud of regardless of how it turned out, regardless of the outcome. And if you're not around people who are going to value you for your optimism and for your wild imagination and believing in yourself and believing in what your life could look like, then I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You've got me in your corner. I value people so much who put themselves out there, and I respect when I see people trying new things or taking risks. I have so much admiration for you guys. And while I do have admiration for people who do take take risks and put themselves in challenging situations, if you're not ready to do that, I want you to know that that's okay. It took me 23 years to leave my parents' house. That might seem late for some people, that might seem early for others, I don't know. But it was that long for me to build up even remotely the amount of courage that I needed to do that. It's taken me however long I've known YouTube has existed to now to start my YouTube channel. So it doesn't matter when you take it or when you dive into the deep end and you follow that optimism, because you're all on your own journey. And I do want to acknowledge that taking risks is a privilege. I was able to move countries because I had money in savings, and a lot of people don't have that. And so I understand that putting yourself out there and betting on yourself is harder if you're not in a circumstance to do that. Like, you might not be able to. That doesn't mean you never will, though. I really believe that we're all on our own journey. We are exactly where we're meant to be right now. And if you're not ready yet, there might come a time when you are. Just don't give up and don't stop believing in yourself. I also just want to make the observation that if you do take a risk and you know that something bad might happen at the end of it, but you do it anyways because you believe in the positive outcome, you are leaning into that optimistic, dreamer, naive sometimes. You're leaning into that innocent, powerful believer side of yourself. And that is an incredibly hard thing to do. It feels so good to lean into that side of your personality. I don't know about you, but I kind of think I need to do that more. I think that I'm so easily wired into just going into that anxious side of things, but I think my body wants to be optimistic and my body wants to believe that good things are going to happen. So I think I'm going to try and lean into that side of things, because if I don't believe that, who will? If you don't believe that about yourself, I'll believe it for you. But I'm going to need you to believe in yourself at some stage. We got to do it. It does feel good to lean into that side of yourself. And truly, being Delulu is the Salulu. It does feel delusional when you're the only person believing in something, but man, is that going to make it worth it when it happens. So I wanted to leave you all with this question, and that is, what would you do if you weren't afraid to fail? I'd love to know what you think, and let me know down below if you feel brave enough to share. If not, that's completely fine. I just want you to think about that, and maybe it'll get you moving in the right direction, moving and shaking. Thank you guys for listening. As always, have you have a wonderful week ahead, and I will see you next time. I put out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. I'll see you guys.